In our headlines on this Thursday, January 16th, here in South Korea, the president has been largely exercising his right to silence at the Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials following his arrest earlier Wednesday morning on charges of insurrection. And the second hearing of the impeachment case against the president took place at the Constitutional Court this afternoon after the court denied an earlier request by the president's defense team for a postponement owing to his arrest. Meanwhile, despite widespread expectations for yet another rate cut, the Bank of Korea has maintained its benchmark interest rate at 3%, and pundits believe the move seeks to support the South Korean won, which has weakened to a 15-year low against the US dollar. We start today at the Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials in Gwacheon, where a second day of questioning was expected to take place. For more, I have our top office correspondent Kim Do-yeon joining me live. Do-yeon, welcome. Now, a second session of questions was scheduled to open today, but I understand that did not happen. Do tell us more.
Sunny, that's right. As you said, Yoon was supposed to be here at the CIO for more questioning on his charges of insurrection due to his declaration of martial law last month, but he refused. That means he's still at Seoul Detention Center at the moment. At first, in the morning, Yoon's legal team actually requested that the start of questioning be delayed to 2 p.m. due to health reasons, but soon afterward, they said he said everything already, so there is no need for more questioning. And as you said, on the first day, which was yesterday, he was questioned from 11 a.m. to nearly 10 p.m. while remaining silent. And now he's not showing up at all. And what seems to be a lack of cooperation from Yoon reflects his stance on the investigation from the beginning. He's called it illegal as he says the CIO does not have the investigative authority over insurrection charges. And as he left the presidential residence yesterday morning, he said he only gave in to investigators and was detained to prevent any unfortunate clashes between the investigators and the Presidential Security Service.
Right, Do-yeon. I hear the president's defense team has also formally called on a local court to look into the legality of the president's arrest.
That's right, Sunny. Earlier in the day, Yoon's team has actually officially called for a review, and Seoul Central District Court is now on this case. And that move by Yoon's team is in line with what we just talked about, how Yoon's team does not think the CIO has the authority over this investigation. Representatives from both Yoon and the CIO are currently at the local court for the hearing. And it should have started a few moments ago. This means if the court rules in favor of Yoon, he will be released. If not, he will be kept under the current detention for questioning. The countdown of 48 hours for Yoon's current detention has been temporarily paused as per the rule for the legality review. The countdown resumes once the CIO's documents that have been sent to the courts for the review are returned. Do keep in mind that the CIO is expected to request another warrant that allows them to detain President Yoon for up to 20 days, and this will probably be done after the court has decided on the legality review of the ongoing arrest.
Meanwhile, Do-yeon, fortunately for the many residents of the Hannam-dong residential area, public rallies in support of and in opposition to the president have moved their base, I understand. What have you been hearing there, Do-yeon?
Right, Sunny, I'm sure you can hear them right now. I've been here since early in the morning, but some protesters were here even before me. And it seems like throughout the day, more have joined. What seemed to be dozens in the morning now has become a lot more than just a few dozen. And now the protesters largely seem to be in support of President Yoon. Also, some ruling People Power Party lawmakers, some 30 of them actually, have joined them briefly a few hours ago to protest against CIO's investigative decisions. Of course, the police also has been very busy since early in the morning, and our van was actually asked to move a few times as they kept on putting more buses to use them as barriers. That's all for now. Back to you, Sunny.
All right, and thank you for the latest on the investigation into insurrection charges against the president, and do keep us posted. Right, President Seollal has become the first sitting president to spend a night at a detention center following his arrest on allegations of insurrection. Our political correspondent Shin Ha-young reports.
President Yoon was taken to the Seoul Detention Center in Uiwang, Gyeonggi-do Province at 9:50 p.m. on Wednesday, where he spent his first night in a cell to himself. Yoon was taken by car from the Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials after 10 hours of questioning. This unprecedented situation with the sitting president being detained has raised questions about security at the prison, but no specific rules are in place. The Presidential Security Service has reportedly discussed security measures with the detention center. However, an official from the Ministry of Justice said discussions about Yoon's security are confidential and cannot be confirmed. The room, about 10 square meters, is reported to have a toilet, television, foldable mattress, and other essentials. There is no bed, but the floor is heated with CCTV monitoring the room. Former Presidents Roh Tae-woo and Park Geun-hye were held at this detention center, and currently former minor opposition party leader Cho Guk, sentenced for academic fraud involving his children, is serving time there. Yoon's breakfast on Thursday morning included cereal, boiled eggs, nuts, and milk. Until a decision is made on another type of arrest warrant seeking a longer period of detention, Yoon will be moving back and forth between the CIO for questioning and the detention center. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
And moving forward, the second hearing of the impeachment case against President Yoon Seollal took place as scheduled despite a request for postponement placed by the president's defense team amid his arrest the day prior. For details, I have Oh Seong standing by live. Seong, let's start with the prosecution's allegations and the defense team's arguments.
Sure, Sunny. Good afternoon. So today at the courtroom, we saw fiery opinions exchanged here over whether the president's martial law on December 3rd could be justified, with each side representing the executive and the legislature accusing each other of undermining the constitutional order and abusing power. The National Assembly's impeachment panel said they set out 5 grounds for impeaching President Yoon, declaring that his martial law decree disrupted the country's constitution and democracy. They argued that there were no conditions in which a martial law decree could be justified, saying that it could only be triggered by the president under the constitution only in times of national crises such as war or conditions akin to war. The panel also said that Yoon violated the procedure of declaring the decree by not having properly gone through cabinet approval. Panel members further claimed that Yoon tried to paralyse the functions of government by aiming to prevent a motion to lift martial law and tried to block political activities, gatherings and press freedom. The Assembly side further said Yoon tried to undermine the independence of the National Election Commission and tried to detain judicial figures. Meanwhile, Yoon's lawyers questioned the impeachment process itself and emphasised the context in which the president felt forced to declare the fateful decree. The lawyers insisted that the president was initiating peaceful martial law, as they said, against the opposition-led parliament's series of attacks and impeachment motions against the incumbent government. They also argued that martial law should not be subject to judicial review, calling it an act of governance that can be exercised by the president. Yoon's side also raised suspicions about election fraud and claimed it was the president's duty to try and protect the constitutional order from the National Election Commission, which had refused investigations. The team reiterated their position that the National Assembly's move to remove the debate over insurrection charges from the trial undermines its legitimacy, as the Assembly cited insurrection as a major reason for impeachment in their resolution.
Right, I see. And Seong, for very clear reasons, the second hearing also proceeded in the absence of the president, right?
That's right. On Thursday, the Constitutional Court dismissed President Yoon's lawyers' request to postpone the second trial hearing, a request that they made given his 48-hour detainment for questioning, which began on Wednesday. And the court's press officer, Chun Jae-yeon, said that the judges, the full bench of justices, had discussed the issue, and they agreed that the reason that Yoon's team presented did not justify a postponement of the trial hearing. She said that since the trial has already begun, any objections to its commencement can be considered implicitly dismissed, adding that the scheduling is at the court's discretion. Regarding the President's request to challenge the legality of a second warrant to detain him for questioning, the Constitutional Court stated that it would continue to deliberate on the matter. Now, the next trial hearing for President Yoon's impeachment will be held next Tuesday at 2 p.m.
I see. All right, Seong, thank you for that coverage. That was our Oh Soo-young reporting live from the Constitutional Court. Policymakers at Seoul Central Bank have decided to hold their benchmark interest rate steady at 3%. Our correspondent Lee Soo-jin tells us why.
South Korea's central bank held its key interest rate steady at 3% as the Korean won remains weak. The decision was announced on Thursday following the first Monetary Policy Committee meeting of the year.
We decided that it would be appropriate to maintain the current rate while monitoring internal and external conditions, as domestic political circumstances and changes in major countries' economic policies have increased uncertainties in terms of the economic outlook and foreign exchange markets.
It's worth noting that the rate freeze decision comes after 2 consecutive quarter-point cuts in both October and November monetary policy meetings last year, after the key rate was frozen at 3.5% since January 2023 in a bid to tackle inflation. There was a lot of speculation in the markets before the decision was announced. A rate cut had been anticipated by some due to concerns about a downturn in the economy due to ongoing political turmoil, as well as uncertainties over President-elect Donald Trump's second term. But the Bank of Korea ultimately decided to freeze the interest rate due to a weaker Korean won against the greenback and minutes from the U.S. Fed's December meeting where officials hinted they would be moving more slowly on interest rate cuts. If the interest rate gap between the two countries widens, it could lead to further currency depreciation. In December, the average won-dollar exchange rate stood at 1,434.42, a change of nearly 3% from an average of 1,393.38 in November.
So it might be better to leave the interest rate where it is right now and at least for the moment have government spending increase. I do not think inflation will be a serious problem this year.
The country's annual consumer inflation rose by 2.3% in 2024, the lowest rate since the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. As for its assessment of the domestic economy, the Bank of Korea forecasts a sluggish economic growth this year, as exports are expected to weaken due to political uncertainties. Acknowledging concerns about the domestic economy, the central bank hinted at possible rate cuts in the future and pledged to carefully monitor inflation and currency trends before making the decision. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, Korea's automobile industry remained resilient last year, driven by its exports of hybrid vehicles. Our correspondent Moon Hye-ryun has more.
South Korea's auto exports continue to boom in 2024 due to robust growth in hybrid vehicle exports. That's according to the latest Automotive trends report released by the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy on Thursday, which shows that the country's auto exports came to $70.8 billion last year. This marks the second highest annual performance following the record of $70.9 billion in 2023. Despite the global stagnation in demand for electric vehicles contributing to the 0.1% decline in total exports, the popularity of hybrid vehicles offset the losses. Exports of eco-friendly vehicles, which include EVs, hydrogen vehicles, hybrids and plug-in hybrids, totaled $23.21 billion, down by around 4% from the previous year. However, hybrid vehicle exports surged by nearly 46%, $11.3 billion. In terms of domestic production, South Korean automakers produced 4.13 million vehicles in 2024, a 2.7% decline from the previous year. The top produced models were Hyundai Motors Avante, Chevrolet Trax, Hyundai Motors Kona, Kia Motors Sportage, and GM Korea Chevrolet Trailblazer. Approximately 67% of domestically produced vehicles were exported. Domestic sales dropped by 6.5% year-on-year, reaching 1.63 million units as weakened consumer sentiment and declining EV demand took a toll. However, eco-friendly vehicle sales in the domestic market showed resilience, climbing by more than 18%, meaning that 4 out of every 10 new vehicles sold in South Korea last year were eco-friendly. Among these, hybrid vehicles stood out with a 32% surge in sales compared to 2023. December's automobile export revenue, however, fell more than 5% from the same month in the previous year to $6 billion. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy attributed the decline to factors such as the safety inspections and component factory damages caused by heavy snow in late November, as well as a drop in export prices due to weaker EV demand. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
And in other news, the days between January 20th and February 5th have been declared a period of emergency medical response as the government seeks to secure the operation of as many medical facilities and pharmacies as possible amid the longer New Year holiday and a concerning surge in the number of respiratory infections nationwide. Intentions to this end were shared following talks between health ministry officials and ruling party lawmakers at the National Assembly earlier on this Thursday. The number of suspected flu cases soared to its highest this month since related data collection began in the year 2016. Aggravating concerns is the reality that many hospitals are operating in the absence of trainee doctors following their collective resignation last year. On the international front, starting Sunday this week local time, a truce takes effect in Gaza to temporarily halt the fighting between Israel and Hamas for 6 weeks. Our Lee Seung-jae has details.
Israel and Hamas have agreed to a ceasefire deal that will put a halt to the conflict in Gaza for 6 weeks, beginning on Sunday. Qatar's prime minister announced a ceasefire deal on Wednesday, adding his hope that the pause in fighting will lead to an eventual permanent ceasefire.
Qatar, the Arab Republic of Egypt and the United States are happy to announce the success of joint mediation efforts in order to reach a deal between the parties in conflict in the Gaza territory, to exchange prisoners and hostages, and a return to a prolonged truce that achieves a permanent ceasefire between the two sides.
As part of the ceasefire deal, the Palestinian militant group is expected to release 33 Israeli hostages initially. In exchange, Israel released 30 Palestinian prisoners for every Israeli hostage and 50 Palestinian prisoners for every one of the 5 female Israeli soldiers being held in Gaza. Within the first 42 days of the deal, females and hostages under 19 years old will be released. They make up the 33 Israeli hostages mentioned in the agreement. Reports say some 1,650 Palestinian prisoners could be released as part of the deal. Pundits say the growing pressure to have Israeli hostages returned home forced Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to agree to the ceasefire deal, while others say the election of Donald Trump was behind it. However, both Trump and U.S. President Joe Biden were quick to take credit. Speaking from the White House on Wednesday, Biden said the deal was reached under the precise contours of a plan he set out in May last year. Biden added that the ceasefire deal was the result of painstaking American diplomacy. On the other hand, Trump took to Truth Social to say that the ceasefire agreement could have only happened as a result of his historic victory in November. Biden says negotiations will continue beyond the latest temporary ceasefire to phase 2 of the deal that could include a permanent halt to the conflict in Gaza. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And U.S. Secretary of State nominee Marco Rubio says North Korea's Kim Jong-un is using nuclear weapons as his insurance policy to stay in power. Now, during his confirmation hearing on Wednesday, Rubio depicted Kim Jong-un as, quote, a 40-something-year-old dictator seeking ways to secure power for the rest of his life by pursuing nuclear weapons. He further claimed no amount of sanctions would therefore deter Kim from developing nuclear weapons. And back here on the local front, every year Korea hosts an awards ceremony to acknowledge the efforts of those who serve to enhance the country's image overseas. Our An Sung-jin was at the latest event.
Gold medal fencer Oh Sang-ok, table tennis medalist Shin Yu-bin, and star chef Edward Lee. What these figures have in common is that they have played a key role in raising Korea's image. Since 2005, the Korea Image Communication Institute holds its annual Korea Image Awards, which not only honors those who raise Korea's profile abroad, but also those who represent and shine the country. Oh became the first Asian fencer to win a Grand Slam of gold at the Asian Games, Asian Championships, World Championships, and Olympics.
When fencing at the Olympics, I never thought about being Asia's first, which is actually what helped me win the match.
Fellow Olympic medalist Shin Yoo-bin, who won 2 bronze medals in table tennis, was given the Korea Image Flower Stone Award. Shin went viral at the Games for her positive attitude and for the snacks she ate during her breaks.
It's an honor to receive this award, and I'm glad that my accomplishments can help promote the country. I've still got a long way to go, but I will do my best to further promote South Korea.
The finalist on Netflix's Culinary Class Wars, Edward Kun Lee, was given the Korea Image Stepping Stone Bridge Award for his efforts to introduce Korean cuisine with traditional ingredients and a modern twist.
For the past few months, I was able to look back on who I am as Korean Yoon. So many people from Korea have sent me love and support, and I was truly able to understand the meaning of Jong in Korea.
These award winners show that it's not just K-pop and dramas that spread Korean culture around the world. An Song-jin, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. In the U.S., President-elect Donald Trump's pick for Attorney General Pam Bondi testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee on Wednesday, vowing to maintain the Justice Department's independence. Bondi, who previously served as Florida's Attorney General from 2011 to 2019, said she will not allow politics to influence her decisions and that her duty is to uphold the rule of law. While Democratic senators expressed concerns about her close ties to Trump, particularly her role as his lawyer during his 2020 impeachment trial and her comments related to the 2020 election, Republican senators voiced confidence in her confirmation. Bondi also emphasized that her overriding objective would be to keep Americans safe and get back to basics. In China, the Ministry of Commerce issued a statement denouncing recent U.S. trade restrictions, particularly those targeting China's semiconductor industry. It said the Biden administration's expansion of export controls were economic coercion and a violation of international trade rules. The Commerce Ministry spokesperson added that such measures disrupt global supply chains and harm the interests of both Chinese and American companies. This follows the U.S. Commerce Department's recent addition of several Chinese tech firms to its export control list, aiming to limit China's access to advanced semiconductor technologies. In South Africa, a police operation has retrieved at least 78 bodies from an illegal gold mine. Hundreds of miners have been trapped for months in the mine in Stilfontein, with the police trying to force them out by cutting off food and water. The operation also rescued 246 survivors from the mine, with many of the survivors in such bad condition from lack of food and water that they were unable to walk. The South African government's harsh measures to attempt to curb illegal mining have drawn criticism from human rights groups and community members. Over in Bulgaria, people dressed in masks and costumes to celebrate a festival that dates back 200 years. This annual New Year's festival, called Surva, aims to ward off evil spirits and ensure good health and prosperity. Surva is celebrated every January in villages across Bulgaria and incorporates rituals that are Christian and pagan. While the festival's official opening is scheduled for the evening of January 24th at Krakra Square in Pernik, villagers began celebrating with activities such as bonfire dances early this week. Choi Ji-hee, Arirang News.
In this cold weather, some sporadic snow fell mainly on western parts of the country today. Due to the rain and snow, the roads can turn slippery overnight. Please pay attention to traffic safety when driving. Cold wave advisories are in place in Gangwon-do province. The temperatures in Daegwallyeong in Gangwon-do province plummeted to -13 degrees Celsius today. This freezing cold will continue in these areas. Elsewhere, the temperatures will rise from the afternoon, and there will be no worries about the severe cold until next week. Tomorrow's Seoul, Daegu, and Gyeongju will start off at -5 degrees, Daejeon -4 degrees. Daily highs will move up to 5 degrees in Seoul, Gwangju 7 degrees. More rain or snow is expected in the central and northern parts of the country on Monday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Right, that ends our newscast for now. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session.